And let me start over. My name is Daniel Fehr-Krahn, and we're on workshop number 5. Now, if you're looking for how we got here, our workshop number 1 was just about financial concepts, things like the wealth formula or X curve, financial foundations. And then we jumped into details with workshop number 2 about cash flow management. And so each workshop will have a belief system and some skills. So a belief system in workshop number 2 is that you should spend less than you make. That is not a skill. There's a belief system. You know, when you get to the point where you spent all your money, you either stop spending or you don't. And depending on your belief system. Now, some of the skills are organizing debt roll-up, paying off your debt, you know, managing some of your taxes, tracking your expenses, maybe increasing your income. But regardless of your income, regardless of your expenses, there should be a ratio that if you divide one by the other, it doesn't become a positive number, you know, where it's you're spending less than you're making. And then the third workshop is about protecting your income. And what I mean by that is many times we look at social media, what's real, what's not real. But one of the things that is very real is the need for protection in a crisis. And I was talking to someone last week whose house burned down and they had some protection, or if someone passed away, or they get cancer, or they, you know, something goes wrong. Maybe you get a toothache, you crash your car, you get a flat tire. You know, there's all sorts of protection that we buy, and we believe it's real needed. You know, and we believe that it's something that people should look into when they're planning their finances. The fourth workshop, the one before this one, was the idea of putting your money at risk. And so it's going to meld into this one a little bit, where the way we buy an investment is you buy a potential future gain that is unknown. And usually when you buy an investment, you don't know the future price of the investment because you don't know the future buyer. So if I'm buying, for example, a public security, or I'm buying a mutual fund or an investment fund, I'm going to buy it from a marketplace. Just like if I go and I buy like romaine lettuce right now at Superstore, it's $10 for like a bunch of lettuce for a salad. I don't know what the price of the salad is going to be in 10 years. It could be $20. It could be $5. But because I don't know where I'm going to buy it. And so if I ever want a guaranteed investment, I have to have a guarantor who's willing to buy that back from me. So that works in banking or works in permanent life insurance, like in a whole life type of program where you buy a contract and you can sell that contract back. But in most of the world, when you buy something, whatever you buy should have value, and that value would grow into the future. And there is unknowns, and there are some things that are known. So that's workshop number 5. And typically when you enter a marketplace or you enter a stock market, that as long as you have exposure to the market long term, historically you've done very well. But if you have in and out, and if you get an offer on an investment that's lower than you expected, you are not required to sell. It's a function of law in Canada that on an investment that's publicly traded, you need to have a daily price, an option. The consumer gets to choose whether they buy or sell. They don't have to sell their investments if the market's down, and they don't have to buy more either. In fact, all the risk is in the consumer and not in the investment. And that brings us to today's workshop, workshop number 5, which is about long-term goals, of figuring out what does this look like? You know, what are long-term goals? And let's jump in here. Let me see if I can share my content on my device. Start. There we go. It's coming. Here we go. You see me. By the way, if you're ever on an iPad, you can take this guy and you can stick him on the side so nobody sees him. This is a disclaimer that I do everything I can to keep all of our information current. If it's not current, we apologize, but we want to keep everything current and up to date. what makes us unique? I think the more I'm in our industry, the more unique we are. Now, financial education isn't an option, it's a necessity. What I mean by that is, if you had to go get a financial education and we weren't around, where would you go? Would people go to the bank? Would they go to the ivory tower? Would they go to the local insurance company? Would they go to in Winnipeg, we have auto pack or car insurance, or where do you go get? Do you go to your parents? Do you go to your high school? Do you go to the loan shark? Do you go to the mafia? Do you go to the government? Do you go where? Who? And do you go to your friends? Do you go to the workplace? And so the question of we are in a lonely industry that I think we're the only ones doing it. And we want to be in a part of a campaign that changes the financial industry, that we want to build with a system. If you're going to be building big numbers, you need a system. And in this workshop, there's two types of people. There's people that just want to I want to learn about money. And you came to the right place. I want to let you know that you're in the right place. We're going to spend about an hour together. And there's other people that want to be a part of it. And you're also in the right place where you're not learning to put into action. You're putting into action, then learning, then we're going to go share. And so we do it in slightly different order. If someone says, don't take action until I'm going to learn first, there's a place for you, but the best is you take action, then you learn, then you share what you learned once you learn how to articulate it. And I heard the difference between noise and signal is about clarity and usefulness. Where every day we're flooded with information, we call that noise. What a signal is what do you do amongst the noise? And many people offer financial advice, but they're unlicensed. I met with I hope he's on here. I met with a gentleman this morning about in real estate, and he's a mortgage expert, a specialist, and he starts educating about mortgages. But then there's other products that he maybe doesn't. He's not the best at. He's not up to where he can educate. He's just learning to use. And if you go to a mortgage expert, you get mortgage expert advice. If you get an insurance expert, you get insurance advice. My tax guy does tax advice. My accounting guy does record keeping advice. When you go to different doctors, they're all specialists. But when it comes to education, you've got to be a generalist. And if you read 100 books on business, they're going to say specialize, 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 because they're very limited in the market. And we want to be not specialists. We want to be holistic. Holistic is a better word than generalist. But in the end of the day, I want to sit with a family, and I know they have general problems. They have generalist problems. They don't need much of. A lot of people don't need a specialist. They need someone with some empathy and some curiosity. And so we're going to look at you today of empowering you to become your own money manager. And we believe that once you can become your own once you become your own money manager, you can help others become their own money manager as well. And so the control your finances, control your future. What this should look like is control your emotion, then control your finances, then control your future. Because if you don't control your emotion, you will not control your finances. We believe in a concept called financial foundation. Like building a house, you build it from the ground up. If you have extra money and you're looking to plan, we believe there's 4 areas you can put that money. Everything other than lifestyle falls into these 4 areas. I can buy more insurance, protect my family. I can pay more off debt so I could reuse the debt I paid off. I can build up cash for emergencies, or I can put my money at risk in case I get old and need that money. And so today we're going to talk about the investment world, what that looks like, how it works, and who should be in it. So when you're looking at long-term goals, we're going to talk about really 3 topics, 2 topics, 1 subtopic. One is higher education costs money. Retirement usually costs more money than you think. And the tax impact usually is a percentage of, so if you don't save a lot for retirement and you don't save a lot for education, the taxes is negligible. But if you're saving a lot, these are the issues. So two of the biggest long-term goals are college or university, kids' education, or retirement. So when we look at this, we're going to attack college first, then retirement. That's what we're going to go through. I believe when you're funding it, my opinion, in my culture, I should do retirement first. Once I'm on track to retire, then kids' education. And I got 2 children. Here's why I think that. If I only have, let's say, 15% of my income, and I fund my retirement well, I have more compounding years, and I retire well, I don't have to move in with my children. But if I fund their education and I don't fund my retirement, what am I going to do when I get old? Then I have to move in with my children. So in some cultures, you make the bet of, I'm going to make sure my kids get a good education, then they're going to take care of me when I get old, if I have to choose. And the real difference is I can finance university, but I cannot finance retirement. So if I save for retirement, I can finance university, take care of that later. It might not be as efficient, but I can. So we're going to tackle college first because you're going to experience it first. Common questions we have are, hey, am I going to pay for it? Am I going to do $50 a month? So you get asked, does it make sense you pay for it? Does people value things they pay for? And so if I'm going to save, where do I save? Does it fit in an overall strategy? So I think you should look at your overall strategy first, and then look at each micro product. And a plan is a bag of products in the sense of I have a savings product, insurance product, and investment product. And let's look at the cost of education. So when we look at this thing, change my view 1 second. When I look at this, the average child needs about $200,000 to raise a child. It does include university, which is really over 20 years, maybe 20 grand a year, or $2 grand a month. You got to have a bigger house, all this kind of stuff. But do you think university has value? Now, I think that having cash for education has a lot of value. Now, I don't think every degree has value. Some degrees do, some degrees don't. And I think it'd be nice to help an 18-year-old decide what value truly is, where you get it. But if you live at home, you're looking at about 48 grand or 10,000 a year, roughly. If you live outside, it's 20,000 a year. After inflation, it might be a little more. So if I got a $48,000 bill I got to pay, and university debt become ridiculous, I have 2 options. This is what it's going to cost in the future. For example, if I have 48,000 today, in 20 years, it might be 70,000. So I think, okay, when is my son going to need this? And so don't let the lack of knowledge planning leave your children on a mountain of student debt. If they're going to get a financial product, don't make debt be the first one. So we can look at personal savings, grants, or loans. Let's get through here. Can I save $50 and tell my son, don't worry, you could choose any school you want? If I want to have 65,000 at 8% for 18 years, I'm looking at $150 a month. So, I don't think it's a lot of money. I don't think it's a little bit of money, but this is what it looks like. And I think, hey, can I put $100 to $300 away? In Canada, we have this cool thing called the child tax credit. Maybe I use that to save for my kids' education. And I want to look at, where am I saving? What are my options? So we have one option that's very common called an RESP. Every product has a bag of goods and a bag of negatives. So let's look at both these. When you put money into an RESP, you're going to get a 20% match one time, and up to $2,500 per child per year. And you get a lifetime maximum of $7,200. That's in the grant space. So you can put a lot of money in here. And you get additional government grants if you're in the poor Different provinces have different things available. Here's the downside. If an RESP is not used for an approved educational institution, which means I'm not buying YouTube videos or doing something like that, I'm going to an accredited university, the government grants get reversed, but I keep all the interest I've earned on those grants. If I lose money based on my investments, I also keep the loss. But a family plan allows any child to utilize an RESP. So if you don't use it for school, you lose the grant. They were free anyways. But the growth would be taxed in the parent's name. If I use it for school, the growth is taxed in the child's name. So let's look here. By the way, if you have a textbook, like this, and you can go through and be taking notes here. But yeah, I can be more diligent. But let me look through that a bit. Hey, earnings and withdrawals are not taxed on the original capital, but only the growth earnings and the grants are taxed. The parent stays in control, so you're not giving up control. Contributions are not tax deductible like the RRSP. And we're going to have a really cool product coming likely January 1st that nobody knows about it, called a real estate first-time home buyers plan savings plan, something like that. Some long name, where it's likely going to be tax deductible and no tax on the way out. And you got to use it to buy a home. Earnings, for any reason, is allowed, but earnings are going to subject to capital or income tax. So I can take my money out, but I got to pay tax on it. One of the things I like about an RESP is if your kid's going to go to university, you might want to back test, okay, we're going to save 10 grand. Okay, that's only 4 years of savings. If it's 2,500 a year. So I could build up my TFSA and then transfer it to RESP as I get closer, still get my grants. The Canada Student Financial Assistance Program is a program where you can get free money that you do not need to repay, and you can get more than one grant. My wife used grants to go through some university, and we didn't have to borrow the money. And then loans, if you do a loan, it usually begins after finishing school. And so when we run a savings program, watch this, interest begins after finishing school. So here's what I look at. If I'm saving $100 a month, and I'm going to save that for 25 years, then I look at, hey, when my kid's 25, I say, if you graduate and you're profitable, I will repay all your loans. So I'm not running an 18-year savings program. I'm running a 25-year savings program, because I'm going to pull my money out of my investment to pay off my student loans or my kids' student loans if they do a good job. If they don't graduate or they get the wrong degree, it's not profitable, maybe I don't have to pay it back. Every man maybe should stand on their own decisions. But we can run it a little bit longer when we're doing an investment plan. I can let the RESP continue to grow if I use an RESP, or if it's a down market when they go to school, I can take a loan out and then wait for the market to recover to pay that stuff back. And so when I look at how much can you get, when you're looking at grants, it looks at how much you apply for. You apply for 1 grant, 5 grants. You can look at a student aid estimator and get some money that way. But planning for school should be planning. It shouldn't be just waiting till you get 18 and go. And so when I look at what do you think the tuition is going to be? One of the cool things is you should go to the school you want to go to and ask them, what is the tuition? What are the options? How the government's going to help me? Is the government going to take from me? What does this stuff look like? And you can look at us, and we have some programs we can put people through that help them understand some of these and some of these situations. But let's look at retirement now. some of the checklists if you want to do retirement planning. So retirement savings is different than retirement planning. What I mean by that is everybody should save 10% of their income as a rule of thumb. So what you say is, hey, when you're 20 years old, save 10% of your money. Whether you put it against your home, pay off your TFSA, pay off your car, fill up your RSP, whatever you're doing, matching stuff at work. But planning is an issue of saying, hey, I got some cash. I have cash and I'm free from all my debt payments. And I'm no longer paying for university because sometimes you got to pull, I don't want you to pull retirement money out to pay for university. So you can look at that stuff and figure out how this works. So you can do retirement savings before a lot of planning. But let's look at this stuff. There's 3 sources of income when it comes to retirement: government, company, and personal. Some are guaranteed, some are not guaranteed. We have 2 options whenever we do a savings plan. One is a variable and fixed. Variable means up and down. Fixed means it's a contract. That's what we like to think fixed means. Fixed income is sometimes not a contract, but these ones here are fixed. They're variable depends on what you do early in life, but once you start collecting them, they're fairly fixed. We're going to look at all 3 of these: OAS, CPP, and GIS. There's the allowance is the 4th government benefit, but the 3 of these are the 3 core. Should you know how much you're going to get and when? So when you're dealing with clients and you want to know something or you want to make a statement, this is a great lesson to say. You shouldn't say, hey, everybody should know how much they're going to get from retirement. Do you agree? And or you should know how much you're going to get from retirement. It kind of talks down to people. But if you say, hey, shouldn't you know how much you're going to get and when? You say, yeah, I should. We go and do the investigation. We can go to canada.ca, we can check. But here's how it works. OAS, or Old Age Security, when it began, they chose the age 65. That was life expectancy. So retirement age and life expectancy were the same. If they redo it, then retirement age will be closer to 85. People will be working longer. I think they are working longer. But you're going to get about $650 a month. If you're married, times 2. Employment's not a factor. And if you make a lot of money, you're going to get clawed back. OAS, this is important. If you're writing notes down, OAS does not count for GIS calculation. OAS is not included in GIS calculation. We're going to get to that. We're going to talk about taxes in a little bit. CPP is included in GIS calculation. So here you pay into this thing. It is not a government pension program. It's administered by the government, but it's not the government's money, it's our money. So the average amount is about $800. So $800 plus $650. If you worked a little bit more than average, call it $1,500. If you're married, it's $3,000 coming in. OAS and CPP is taxable. GIS, non-taxable. So OAS, CPP is taxable. So by the way, if you wait and you increase your CPP, you also increase your tax position. And because GIS is calculated based on CPP, you reduce your OAS. Sorry, you reduce your GIS. So here's how this works. You can take it as early as 60 or as late as 70. The earlier you take it, the less you get. The later you take it, the more you get. So if you take it at age 60, 65, or 70, here's how it looks. I'm going to get 36% less. So let's say it's $1,000 at age 65. I'm going to get like $640 at age 60 per month forever until I pass away. Or I'm going to get 42, or I'm going to get $1,400 at age 70. So if you're looking to get your GIS The earlier you take it, the better, because you get less of it for longer. And you get more GIS, which starts at age 65. Now, if you wait till you're 70, you get 1,400. Here's one of the major decisions, not how much do you get from the lifetime, but can you survive on 640, or do you have to wait till you get 1,400? I could not live on 640 a month, so I'd have to work 10 years to take the 1,400 if I have no other incomes. So I might be forced to wait till 70 to get more money. But every situation is different. Now, a lot of people say just take it early, but they don't actually look at planning when they do that. In most cases, earlier can be better, depending on your income, because the taxes play into the game. Now, if someone's been an employee their whole life, they equate income to cash flow. Actually, they think cash flow is 70% of your income. But in business or retirement, income and cash flow are different. Here's what I mean. You get a monthly non-taxable benefit to lower income OAS recipient. So lower income doesn't always mean lower cash flow. What I mean by that is this. If I have, and I pay off my home, so I have what's called home equity. If I have a TFSA, and I have an insurance with some cash value, these are the three places in Canada. If you do it right, for example, you don't rent your home out, that becomes taxable. If you day trade in your TFSA, you ruin it. Or if you withdraw the cash value from the insurance, we don't have time today, but you could do it wrong. And you know, if you rent your house out, it's not a principal resident. But I could take money from these sources. It is not considered income. Which means I might get my GIS. So if you're 65 and older and you're drawing money from your home, your TFSA, or your cash value, it's not income. You do it right. And so you're allowed 19,000 in income to get some GIS. Here's how this works. My CPP counts towards this. My OAS does not. If I have RRSP, it's going to count. Pension, it's going to count. And if I have a job, it's going to count. Any kind of income. Or if I revenue, you file your taxes if it's income. But if I pull cash flow out, that's not income. My maximum GIS is about $900 a month. And so we want to make sure, I like the fact that I want to get my max GIS. So it's something when we're looking at it, it's probably the least talked about how to figure out, hey, how about we don't have income for a bunch of years and we just live on cash flow? And then we can turn it on and off. But you can go to Canada.ca and play the game, or work with someone who you trust who understands some of these things, and they could explain it to you in a way you understand it. And the government is about 1/3 of your retirement. That's their intention. Their intention is not to make you free. It's just to pay you enough that you could keep a roof on your head and some food in your mouth. That's it. So where else are we going to put the money? When we're investing, if you go to company pension, there's two types of company pensions that are very core. One is called a defined benefit plan. The employer typically purchases this type of program, and you get a defined benefit, and it's very costly and no control. My belief is this. There's a defined contribution plan that the paid employee, the employee pays some employers can match. The investment performance matters quite a bit, and the investment responsibility and the fees are paid for by the employee. And so, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Many things in life, if you don't know how to control, you don't want to control. If you don't know how to drive a car, you should not drive a car. And so here's what I think happened in the 70s. In the 70s, the regulators got involved and they said that this defined benefit plan has too much fees. So they stripped the fees out of it. We can sell these still too, but very few people do. So they said, let's not distribute this stuff anymore. These things had lots of fees. So the industry started selling contribution plans. And the regulator didn't want people selling defined benefit because you could probably make a lot of money doing that. And they made it almost unsellable. So since the 70s, nobody sells it. So if you have a company that's newer, nobody buys it. And we want to know, what do you have? Are you going to get a lump sum, or are you going to get an income stream? And you want to look at, hey, what do you have? How does it work? Everything's a little different. All plans are not equal. And there's a shift in responsibility that you got to look after your own retirement. And so when we do a retirement calculator, it says this is how much you need to save. And how much you save depends sometimes in the tax situation. And where you put it matters. So I look at, we're going to go over some different places to put it. A mutual fund is probably one of the greatest inventions in finance, where someone manages risk that you get paid to take. So typically, whoever takes the risk gets paid the profit. Whoever manages the risk gets paid a salary. So they get a steady income, but never the most of it. And whoever takes the risk also takes the control. So you manage who manages your money. And you can purchase shares of a fund. Instead of buying one stock, they can build a fund and you can partake so you don't have to buy one thing. The content and the risk of the portfolio is public to what you want to buy. So you know what it is. You can buy units as small as $50. So when someone says, I don't want to get into real estate because I got to put 50 grand down, why don't you start with a mutual fund? If you like income, you could buy dividend paying mutual fund and take the dividend back. So let's say the average dividend is between 1% and 5%. You get a 3% dividend every year forever. It's the greatest passive income created that you can participate in the market. By law in Canada, you need to have marked to market, which means they're going to mark the price that you could sell at every business day. And you could sell at that price. A mutual fund is liquid daily. An ETF is liquid intraday. They have to have every second, or it's intra second. But there's liquidity. You could get in and out. Now, liquidity is not always a good thing for the average person. It's actually a bad thing because people sell things that are liquid. And so you're going to have a buy price and an offer price. You do not have to take the offer if the offer is lower than you like. You're never required to sell. Mutual funds don't have a call on them. When you say sell, they're going to sell. The risk is spread out over many asset classes, and you get professional money managers. We call them smart people. You get smart people to manage your money. Wealthy people hire smart people to help them. Poor people think they could do it themselves. Most money that is invested is wealthy people's money, not poor people's money. And so when we talk about risks, wealthy people understand risks and poor people are scared of risk. And so we want to ask, what is the risk? What is the risk of me doing it compared to me risk not doing it? What is the risk of me coming to work every day? Or what is the risk of me not going to work ever? What is the risk of me saving versus not saving? And an investment fund or a segregated fund, it combines the growth potential of an investment fund with some insurance protection. So they can provide a guarantee to say, the insurance company, the reason it's segregated is this. Sorry. If you have a consumer with some money, and there's a market that can go up and down like this. There's also an insurance company with a big reserve. You take your money and you put it into the insurance company's reserve. They take other money from another reserve and they put it in the stock market. So your money is segregated from the stock market. They don't have to buy shares. They can actually put that money back in the reserve, do something else with it. But your money equals the performance in the market, although they might not put your money in the market. So if you pull out $1 million, you might not affect the market price because your money might not have been in the market. But so some things that we like, we could guarantee some or all of your principal. We look at, hey, what does the consumer want? They want to know their money's safe. If you pass away, we could guarantee some, 75% to some, or 100%, and you could reset it every year. So if the market goes like this, you can say, well, every time the market goes up, I'm going to reset it. So then if the market goes down, I always have this watermark set. So my return would always be never losing money. You get creditor protection. Creditor protection is extremely important in a business because business usually use operating debt. Personally, you don't want a lot of operating debt. Only 30 days of operating debt on Visa, MasterCard, or Amex because it's free. First 30 days are free. But in a business, they have operating debt. Here's what happens in a business. If someone operates a business, they have a balance sheet of assets and liabilities. When this person passes away, many times the liabilities, all these creditors are going to immediately go after assets. But typically the business has a family, and they want these assets to go to the family, and the business is going to pay the liabilities. But if I die and I have operational debt, maybe I have I have a loan to operate my business, line of credit, or some commercial property, or inventory debt. All my inventory I would have ever purchased, these are creditors, they're going to go after my assets in a death. If you have a restaurant, all your suppliers are coming after your assets. So if I put my money in a segregated fund, that stuff will exit the business and go to a beneficiary that you choose. So creditors aren't an issue of always going bankrupt. It's an issue of, if I have a creditor, I determine when I pay the creditor back. Probate. If you hear someone say, probate's so expensive, probate cost and probate filing are different. My last accountant that wanted to file probate for one of my clients cost $2,000. And I seen one cost $9,000 because it was more complicated. But an accountant or a tax attorney or a lawyer could file probate. The cost in Manitoba is 0%. There's no probate cost in Manitoba. Different province might be different, but the accountant might file and you might get stuck. And probate's public record, so it becomes subject to the courts. Now, you may need to wait until the end of the term to get a maturity, which is the principal guarantee. And there may be an additional fee. LeCap does not have, or Beneva does not have an additional fee. Other people do. I got no problem paying additional fees as long as I get something. I get what I pay for. I had a Starbucks this morning. They gave me a warm environment. I can take my jacket off. I don't mind paying $5. If I go to another place, it's cold. I want to pay more. Annuities look like this. As people get older, there's a need for long-term solutions. You give a large lump sum of money to an insurance company, and they give you a monthly check. It's like a personal pension. Very simple. Now, when it comes to investment accounts, we get to choose how we invest. So if I buy an investment account, I get to register that investment account as a TFSA, RRSP, LIRA, LRSP, whatever. There's lots of them. PRIF, different things. Now, when I register it, I could also do not registered, which means I'm going to get taxed as it's earned. All of the registrations has to do with the government. All of the investments has to do with risk and return. So the risk and return of a portfolio is a different discussion from tax, grants, stuff like that. So we're going to separate them out. So one registration is called an RDSP, Registered Disability Savings Plan. You must be eligible for the disability tax credit. We're going to sum it up quickly. Depending on your income, you can do up to $1,000 a year. Canada Disability Savings Bond, which is basically $1,000 in free money. And you have to put in money until you are 49, the year you turn 49, and you got to leave it for 10 years. And then your net worth in an RDSP does not affect other government assistance. Now, let me go back. The up, down on the bottom here, this is the most important. Up to 300%, the government will match what you put in. So if I, for example, if I put in $100, the government will put in $300. If I put in $3,000, the government will put in $9,000. And I can put usually $3,500 a year, depending on the situation. So if someone is disabled, we say if someone is living with a disability, instead of saying, are you disabled? We say, are you living with a disability? They have access to the RDSP. It could be everything from a hearing aid to an insulin pump, to blind, to deaf, to different things. There could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in these things. They're very, very well set up. And RRSP is Canada's most popular investment plan because the government partnered with Wall Street to say, let's create some tax incentives to get people to invest. Contributions are tax deductible, which means when you put money in, you can deduct the deposit from your taxes. It grows tax deferred like most registrations. The earnings and the contributions are taxed when you withdraw. This is the opposite of open investments. If I have an open investment, non-registered, or open is the same thing. If I put $100 in a non-registered and it grows by $100 and I end up with $200 in the future, I would only get taxed on the growth. $100 would be taxed, $100 original capital. In RRSP, both the investment earnings and the contribution is taxed when I pull that money out. And there's a limit of 18%, almost 30K, whatever's lower. And your unused room can be carried forward. So here, if you plan on making a lot of money in your lifetime, and you're just figuring this thing out in my 30s, I might need some of that room later to offset and use that deduction. So me personally, I have not purchased RSP because I want to wait till my income is in the top percentile before I start using it. And I'm worried about the future tax rate. Maybe I'd like to get a little closer to my withdrawal before I do that. You can choose your investment options in an RRSP, and you can move from one investment to another with no tax. So you get continuous tax deferral, and you can ensure your investments match as you age, and you can do what's called rebalancing. So you want to work with someone you trust who can explain it to you, someone who's got maybe the heart of an instructor or a teacher to say, hey, teach this to me. How does this work? Someone who, when you ask questions, they get more engaged. If you ask questions and they get less engaged, or if you're working with us, when someone asks you a question, you should engage more as opposed to disengaging. TFSA is the opposite brother of the RRSP. So here's how it's opposite. No matter how much growth you have, you don't ever pay tax. But if you take money out, you can recontribute the following year. So you get the room back. In an RRSP, if you take money out, you don't get that room back. And there's a maximum $6,000. But so I'll go through the details right away. Let me find a blank form. But non-registered, you're going to get taxed as you earned it, which means you're either going to pay dividend tax, income tax, or capital gains tax, or return of capital, which is your original capital. If you're poor, dividend tax is very good. If you have a lot of money, income tax is very bad. And capital gains, only half of it is included. The other half is not included. But we're not going to talk too much about the tax side. If you see something you're curious about, just go become an expert at it. We want to show you this is stuff you need to become an expert at, not to make you an expert in a workshop. We want to just bring the basic knowledge of our entire field force up and the consumer. So when we look at this thing, you make money, they're going to tax you. You spend money, they tax you. You save money, they tax you. you die, maybe they tax you some more. So you don't have to worry about taxes. So when you look at this formula, we want to look at the tax side where there's three negatives. You want to look at, you could control the rate of return, positive or negative. You do have control, and you do have control on the tax. And I don't know if you control the inflation, but out of the three negatives, you control two of them. And so when we're looking at how you're getting taxed, the two most common ways to get taxed are tax later or tax advantage. A lot of the tax now products don't earn a lot of money, so they don't get taxed. But if you, for example, TFSA, life insurance, or primary residence are the three, most things that people traditionally use for retirement are going to be taxed later. And so let's summarize some of this stuff. The RRSP, here's some of the important points. At age 70, 71, you're going to be required to take distributions. And it's taxed as income. Non-registered, you can cash out or borrow against. There's a school of thought that says never borrow money, but it should be never borrow to consume. But sometimes borrowing to a house, not a big deal. Borrowing in a business, not a big deal. Borrowing in retirement for tax savings, not a big deal. Borrowing from your insurance or non-registered, no big deal. So if I buy non-registered investments, this would have included someone buys an index non-registered or buys Bitcoin non-registered or buys whatever. You don't have to sell your asset to get the money out. So you get continuous compounding and access to some of your money. If you have a business, you can borrow money against your business without paying tax on it. TFSA is tax-free when you withdraw the money. And a whole life insurance and universal life insurance, the withdrawals are very different, actually. One is flexible. Universal life is very flexible to put money in. Whole life is not as flexible to put money in. Whole life is very flexible to get money out. Typically, you can do 90% or 100% of your cash value in a whole life. In a universal life, it's typically 50%. You can go to Equitable Bank. You can see a little calculator, how much you can get out. Here, you can cash out or borrow against. If you cancel a life insurance contract, the growth is taxable as income. It's a policy gain taxed as income. So if I want my policy, let's say I buy a policy here, and it's going to grow steadily to here. I don't have to cancel it and then start again and cancel it and start again. It's kind of like a put and take account. What I can do is I can say, I can take a portion of this from the bank and I can let my policy continue to grow. Then if I want to do that again, I can pay it back and then do it again later. So it's a tool to be used once you build up cash. And if you do it right, there are tax advantages. If you do it wrong, it is a tax nightmare. So here's the proposition. I talked to someone earlier today. I said, what if I were to structure where your financial situation became more complicated, but you paid less tax? And he said, I said, the products are more complicated, but you pay less tax. He said, I never heard of that. I said, no, this is how planning works. Yeah, the more planning we do, the more control you have over the details. The simpler the plan, the less control you have over details. And so if I had $1 million, where do I want that money? Let's look at this. Before I go to summary, I have 10 minutes. Let's look at tax now versus tax later. So if I have to choose, for example, an RRSP versus a TFSA, both of these, I choose them because they're pure. TFSA is pure tax-free later, as long as you don't day trade in the account or active income in the account. RRSP is purely retirement. You could pull the money out for school or a first-time home buyer, but it's pretty much purely going to be taxed later. If I'm going to save $5,000 per year, so $5,000 per year for 30 years at 8% interest rate, it's going to equal $600,000. You can do go to our website, financial calculator. So I save 5 grand a year for 30 years. I get a good rate of return. By the way, some people ask, where do you get 8%? The correct answer is financial literacy. If I'm losing weight, I say I lost 10 pounds. They say, where'd you lose it from? Fitness literacy. I know you don't, it's a weird question, but where do you get 8%? From financial literacy. It's a vague yet very specific answer. And I would like more than 8% when I put on my money. I invest lots into education and I get better return than 8 personally. So here, check this out. My RRSP, if I deduct $5,000 from my income, in a good situation, I'm going to get possibly a $2,000 refund. So I deduct, I make 100K, I pay tax on 95, I get 2 grand back, 40%. Times by 30 years, it's 60,000 in refunds during the life of my savings. So I put 5 grand away, 60,000 in refunds over the life of my savings. My TFSA, no tax deductions. If you want tax deductions, you got to run a business. So the RRSP in the first 30 years wins. It's a clear winner, clear. But there's different phases in finance. If, check this out, I'm going to draw out 6% of 600,000. 6% of 600,000 is $36,000. And I'm going to do that for 20 years. My 2,000 of 5,000 is 40%. Let's assume my taxes get better because we have to use round numbers. That's how examples work. So I got to go to 33.3%. So here in the RRSP, I'm going to live on 24,000 and tax is 12,000. It's 30%. But on the tax-free savings, I get to live on 36,000 plus give my GIS, maybe $500 a month. TFSA does not count as income. So whatever the GIS is, you can go to GIS calculator, figure that out. So when I retire, do I want to retire with 24 grand or 36 grand plus GIS? So I'm just spending interest only on the 600 grand. Here's another thing that happens in Canada that we don't talk too much about is long-term care. In Manitoba only, you come to our province, we have a great long-term care program. If you make between 16,000 and 37,000, you are going to live on $3,600 a year. They're going to take it all. It's a 90% tax in a long-term care home ran by the government. Over here, you're going to live on 20K because it's only 16,000 is the cost. So if you go to a long-term care home and you own RRSPs, you're in a big trouble because you're going to charge you based on your income. And so now you don't want income. So we want to look at the long-term care situation. And then if you pass away, so let's say they paid 12 grand times 20 years is 240K in taxes in retirement. Let's assume they don't get long-term care. This 600,000 counts as income. So they're going to pay 300,000 in tax. So the 250 they paid plus the 300,000 they paid, they're going to pay 540 in tax. No tax. So when I look at the numbers, in retirement, TFSA crushes RSP. If you go to a long-term care situation, TFSA crushes RSP. If you die, it double crushes it. And so if I'm doing estate planning, retirement income planning, long-term care planning, it's better to not buy critical illness and not get the deduction from the RSP. I'm better off putting my money in TFSA. It could be if you do the math. But we want to prepare for different scenarios. And when I look at an RSP, the tax deduction can be very useful if you have a higher income. But so when you want a comparison, we want to look at, hey, when we're providing for big financial goals, we want to have different things going on. You can look at higher education. How are we funding this? Now, you can fund out of general savings, TFSA, pay off equity in your home, pay off all your cars, have no debt, so you have good finance terms. When you retire, you're going to have government benefits, company pension, personal savings. And then what's your strategy to get there? For taking distribution. So almost anybody can say, hey, let's do a retirement plan, save $500. Here's one of the questions. When do you take distribution from what? Do I collateralize my insurance first? Do I HELOC my house first? Do I start my RRSP first or my CPP? When do I take what? And we want to maximize your benefits from the government or from your employer. Always be learning and understanding and consistently reevaluating your finances with someone you trust. You can bounce ideas off people that you trust. And I know Lodi, his name's Sook. I know Lodi, and he says the education and support changed my life. Just 3 years later, I'm proud to say I'm on the way to building a financial future for my family. Not only have I found a home for myself, but also a future career for my son. But even more than that, I'm proud to have the ability to share the education and possibly life-changing opportunity. One of the cool things about our career is I can give my career to my family. I can keep it in my bloodline. And one of the advices of the Rockefellers was to keep it in the family, keep the money together, and keep the family together. And so, I don't want to build a career my whole life. Maybe my son doesn't have a career. Maybe the opportunity is not there. So I want to build his career too. One of the greatest miracles is all your problems come from the way you think. And so your problems are your problems, and, if you change the way you think, you can elevate and come up with better problems. And my camera I just cut out. My dongle overheated. 1 second. Well, I'm going to switch cameras to. I'm back. Technology is awesome. But hey, I want to be part of the 30 million families educated. And when we talk to people, our industry needs a new approach of talking to people about, hey, listen, we can come and learn. I have a book with none of the answers in it. You got to put the answers in it. Instead of reading a book, we get people to write the book. We get people to come look at their finances and help understand things, where if you pop by someone's house and you say, hey, let me help you understand one more thing, it's much better than let me sell you one more thing. And I think selling is helping, and serving and being profitable is good and is noble, and it's very hard to make money. So we should be proud of the money we know how to make. But I want people to join our campaign. We need people like you, and we are compensated by growing. And so we want to grow. But work with a professional to help you look at your strategy. A lot of people look at their stuff and they think, I don't have enough money, so I'm not going to make it as efficient as possible. I think you should make it as efficient as possible with whatever you have. It needs to be more efficient the less money you have. And work with someone you trust. And I appreciate you guys coming in and listening to me talk for exactly an hour. And I appreciate being in business with you guys. And I appreciate being in part of the same community. My name is Daniel Fehr-Krahn. Thank you for your time.